Hey guys, welcome to a very special video and just a personal landmark for me because I honestly never thought I'd be doing this for as long as I have. And it's not because I hate YouTubing. I love YouTubing. It's probably one of the top three things I look forward to doing, every single day. It's just YouTubing's kind of it's another beast. It's a lot. It's really complicated. It's a hobby that could be so many other things, and it's just one of those things that's really hard to put into words. It's unique is what I'm trying to say. Like, it could be like a casual hobby, it could be a job, it could be, a super huge passion, it could become, a community. It has all of it could be so many different things. And, just because of all of that, it's just all the more amazing I've been able to do that, for 4 years. And, of course, I'm very thankful for the fact that I've been able to do it for that long. I'm like, wow, that I've been doing this for 4 years. So I guess where I should start off is, just being generally thankful for the fact that I've been able to do it for, as long as I have been. So I guess it wouldn't really be me if I didn't do some kind of like recap. I do that for every single one of these videos. I don't think that's changed. It's literally been every single one of these videos, or at least as many as I can remember. I think I forgot the second and third anniversary, but like, when I hit a subscriber mark or something like that, or, view counts, I always try to make one of these videos when I can. And I guess when I made this channel like 4 years ago, like so long ago, it's so long I could like barely even like comprehend how long it's been. I had a mission, when I went into this, and that mission hopefully hasn't changed. When I made this channel, it was to kind of course I didn't think I would do it all by myself, and still, I don't think that, one man isn't going to really change it. But, I've been watching YouTube since about 2008, and so I feel like I know YouTube pretty well, not really well, but like I know what YouTube's like. I have a pretty good sense of what it's been, how it's changed and stuff like that. And as the years kept going on, I noticed that YouTube would keep changing and changing. And I used to love watching videos of YouTubers, and used to love the way the YouTube system used to be. I used to love the way the channels used to look. Now they look like something you see on a mobile phone. But when the channels look cool, and channel art was everywhere, and you could leave comments for the YouTubers to be on the front page, and they reply, and you just have like this nice, real, like, personal vibe going on. And I kind of started seeing that disappearing as 2012 rolled around, and I guess the whole YouTube money thing started circulating. I just kind of noticed that YouTube was kind of going off in a direction that was very different than the YouTube I knew, the YouTube that I kind of grew up a little bit with, very early on, like my first computer and stuff like that, my first time, doing more gaming and stuff like that, and eventually that would branch off into like this channel, like I like games, I like YouTube, let's make a YouTube gaming channel, that kind of happened. But it's just, as YouTube kept changing and changing and changing, and I kind of noticed that, more and more that it was actually becoming more about, YouTube money. And, now more so than ever, in 2016, it's really started to, come to heads, with like suing and, fair use policy no longer, I guess validating some videos. And now just like we have a huge mess of all this stuff happening. It's just, now it's more different than ever. But, in 2012, it's, I guess you could say that's kind of where it began. And, because that was happening, I just kind of, sat down and I was like, why not? Why not make a channel? So I just kind of, did that, and it was really on a whim, kind of. But as I sat down and I just thought more about it, I gave myself that mission to try and make YouTube more personal again. Just try and treat it like it was before. Like before, it wasn't about making the most clickbait thing, or trying to get as many views as possible. It was just making videos because you love to make videos, and you love to entertain people, and if they found that was awesome, just kind of like advertising yourself and all this stuff that's been kind of happening. Just, it wasn't a thing, like there was no end goal, and the end goal is like to get subs and views and numbers and numbers and numbers. That wasn't really around. It was just to have fun. And those are the YouTubers that I grew up watching. Like I guess I'll call out a few, like Psychedelic Snake was one, and one guy I continue to watch because he really hasn't lost that vibe. He's been doing it since, I believe, 2007, I believe. He's been doing it since then. And, he's one of my favorite YouTubers because he kind of encompasses that idea of the old YouTube. Like, YouTube hasn't changed for him. He continues to just do it, for viewers, with viewers. And, just because it's fun to do so. And, he loves doing it. He just does it because he loves it. There's nothing else about it. And, I just respect that so much about him. And, just YouTubers like him that, just do it because they love to do it. You know, there's no numbers involved, and you know, I just hopefully I've done a good job of kind of replicating that, you know, that mission of theirs, you know, just that pureness that they've been able to kind of, you know, hold on to, despite the fact that YouTube has kept changing and changing and changing. And you know, so many negative things are happening, you know, this year, you know, involving like YouTubers getting shut down, their channels getting taken down, videos getting taken down, and just a lot of controversy that's been happening. So, you know, just to see channels like him still around is just, you know, it's personally, you know, it's such a good thing to see. You know, it's just good to know that the old YouTube isn't gone. And, you know, that's really what I tried to do. You know, I want to make sure that the old YouTube is not forgotten. It's not gone. It's still here in some way. Maybe not the dominant part of the YouTube community, but, you know, in a way it's still around. You know, just do it because you love it. You know, numbers don't really matter. At the end of the day, as long as you're having fun, that's all that matters. That's the most important thing. And, you know, hopefully I've been able to do that. You know, I've had some ups and downs, you know, specifically this year. It might not look like it, but I used to upload daily, and, you know, I loved uploading daily, but I guess 4 years of it eventually burns you out, so that's this year. But yeah, you know, just going into the future, like, you know, of course, you know, when I started out, you know, I wanted to just, you know, do what I felt like doing, and, you know, I did Let's Plays back then. I did Call of Duty. You know, I tried to make video series that would try to put me one-on-one with the people that were watching what I was doing. You know, I did Minecraft and all that stuff, but, you know, times have changed. Let's Plays are kind of gone. I'm trying to bring them back one way or another, but as of right now, that's it's an iffy subject for sure. But hopefully, you know, I will succeed sooner or later. But right now, you know, Call of Duty and, you know, FPS is CS:GO. You know, I made some strides this year that I'm very proud of. You know, I made more YouTube friends. Let's say we all hit landmarks, like Kryptonic hit, you know, 10K views. So Kryptonic, if you're watching this, you know, that's awesome, man. You know, Dan as well, you know, hit, I think, 7K, 8K, something around that. Edwin hit 1.5. No, Wacky hit 1.5. Edwin is approaching that, I believe. Let's see, Alex and Jen hit 1.3. So, like, you know, a lot of landmarks have been happening, and I've got to meet a lot of awesome people, you know, especially, you know, the people that have, you know, watched my videos. You know, I've watched your content. You know, it's kind of like how it was in the past, I guess, or not, well, not really that far back, but like last year, you know, I'm pretty sure I mentioned that in the last, you know, anniversary, but, you know, before I realized I was like super late for it, or like my, you know, some like subscriber goal. You know, I'm pretty sure that, you know, I named a few things like that. So, you know, just to kind of have that back, you know, it's nostalgic, you know, just seeing people, nice people, you know, stop by and watch my videos, and, you know, I kind of return the favor, and you just meet more YouTubers and more, you know, awesome people and like-minded people that way. And, you know, it's kind of like that, you know, it doesn't feel artificial, you know, it feels natural. It's like, you know, meeting someone and you just find out you have something in common, and, you know, just the friendship takes off from there. Just that's the YouTube, you know, I love, and the YouTube I grew up with. And so, you know, it's just good to see that, you know, there are some elements of the old YouTube that are still around. And so, you know, it's just good to see that. But I guess going on into the future, you know, like I said, I kind of cut Let's Plays trying to bring them back. I'm just kind of a mess right now. I did animations over here, I did horror games over here, tried PC games over here. It's just I've been kind of all over the place. That's pretty much been my year, you know. That's the, you know, 2016/2015 for me. I've just kind of been all over the place, trying to do too much at once, and, you know, I'm paying for it. But, you know, going on from here, you know, I'm pretty optimistic. You know, it's good to be positive. Hopefully stay positive. That's step one right there. But you know, Infinite Warfare is coming out. I'm really putting a timestamp on this, but Infinite Warfare is coming out very, very soon. I'm looking forward to that game like you wouldn't believe. Battlefield 1 looks really, really good. I'm still debating whether to get that. Titanfall 2 is coming out. You know, that too is just so many games. And then, you know, other games are coming out, which, you know, we'll probably be alluding to tomorrow. Very, very much putting a timestamp on this. I'm sorry, guys, especially if it makes you click on another video. I'm sorry, my videos are just not the most entertaining, but, you know, starting tomorrow, hopefully what I planned, you know, will start picking up, and it can really start, I guess, or it can really start bringing Let's Plays back. That's the whole point of what's going to be happening the entire week, you know, after today. So we'll see what the future holds. You know, I'm just very much looking forward to it. You know, 4 years. I can't wait to make it 5 next year. Have a few ideas here and there about where I want to take all this stuff, you know, where I want to go. I'm going to be transferring to, you know, hopefully UC Davis next year. So, you know, the adventure continues. It doesn't end here. It's hopefully going to, you know, keep being, you know, just all over the place, just hectic. And, you know, I love it, you know, just being all over the place, you know, not knowing what's next, you know, surprises around every corner. You know, that's part of the fun right there. You know, it might be crazy, it might be, you know, it might get on my nerves sometimes, but you know, I love it, and I wouldn't, you know, trade it for anything else. So hopefully yeah, you know, I can keep doing this, and you know, I very much hope so. I can, you know, make another video like this next year, and you know, the year after that, and the year after that, and hopefully it just keeps going, or you know, however long, you know, YouTube is around, or you know, however long I have absurd amount of free time, I guess. But anyways, yeah, guys, you know, thank you so much for sticking around for this video, and you know, thank you so much to anyone that watches, you know, any of my videos. You know, I really appreciate it. You know, I really couldn't ask for any more. You know, that you guys stick around and watch my content, which, you know, it's not the best, it's not the greatest, it's not even that good. It's just, you know, I like making it, and you know, if you guys love watching it, then you know, that's a double win, and you know, there's really nothing better than that. But yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the gameplay, I guess, if I decided to use gameplay. Hopefully I did. Yeah, I was cramming for Black Ops 3, you know, just enjoying that last week of you know, Nuketown, double XP, you know, just kind of saying goodbye to Black Ops 3, and you know, ready to let Infinite Warfare in the door. And yeah, just I guess we're just gonna see where the future holds, I suppose. Hopefully it's gonna be not as crazy as this has been. Hopefully I can get some control happening, and you know, just looking forward to it, and you know, just I guess can't wait to see what's gonna happen. But yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and you know, again, you know, I want to say thank you to all you guys that watch my content, you know, all my YouTube friends, just you know, everyone, my personal friends, you know, everyone that you know has just inspired me to keep going. You know, just thank you so much for that. And you know, it has made the last 4 years, and ever since I made this channel, you know, it's just made life like really interesting, really, you know, unique, you know, very fun, and you know, on or off the video games. You know, when I talk to people in Skype, and you know, just maybe in PSN chat, you know, just feel like talking. You know, it's just, it doesn't even have to be gaming related. It's just good to know I know such awesome people, and you know, we can just have a good time just doing what we want to do. And you know, that's what YouTube has always been about, and hopefully, you know, that'll stick around in some way. But yeah, guys, I made this video too long. Again, I want to thank you so much for sticking around for this video, you know, celebrating my 4th anniversary on YouTube. Like I said, hopefully not the last one. Hopefully I'll make another one next year. And yeah, guys, until next time, thank you again so much. And like always, have an awesome day. I will see you guys in the next video.